I miss the weight room greatly.
Well, you should really be doing a lot of stretching.
Yeah.
Freehand
I'm stretching right now.
Sit-ups, that kind of stuff.
Len, is there someplace you can point to us that can give us some instructions on stretching?
I made a pull-up bar in my basement with
There you go.
couple 2x6s and an iron pipe and a hole saw.
Hey, Glenn.
I remember when I could do pull-ups.
What's a pull-up?
Exactly.
It's the same as a push away. Push away from the table.
That I can do, Larry.
Did I wait? No, we aren't. Okay. So I think the live stream is up.
Very good. Welcome to our April meeting, which hopefully this is going to be the last. Am I on mute? No. Hopefully this is going to be the last of our Zoom meetings. We'll be able to get back to meeting in person in May. I've got my fingers crossed at least. But want to welcome everybody to our April meeting. And before we get started, I just want to, we do have somewhat of a special occasion here. It is Sylvette's birthday, so please, before we get started, I want to wish Sylvette a happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Wow.
Wow.
That could have been better.
I think we've got some work to do. Let's see if we can do a little better with a Pledge of Allegiance. Sylvette, can you, thanks, happy birthday, Sylvette, and please throw up the flag
Thank you,
for us.
everyone. All right, it's up.
Can they see it?
Yeah, they should be able to see it.
Yep.
Okay, great. To pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
Of the United States of America.
to the republic
To the
which
republic
stands
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Sylvette, we'll move on. You want to do a roll call for us here?
I sure can, and thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate that lovely song.
We'll do cake in May, I hope.
Okay, sounds good. All right, let's start. Brian Daines. Chuck Dicont. Mike Dowd.
Here.
Frank Facciano.
Present.
Glenn Geisinger.
Present.
John Hayes.
Here.
Ron Beckman.
Here.
Larry Hemberger.
Present.
Jeff Matskin.
Here.
Glenn Reedman.
Present.
Ted Rosenberger.
Here, I didn't sing, so happy birthday.
Thank you. Mike Stershik.
Here.
Matt Turk.
I'm here.
Chris Worley.
Here.
And Tara Zrinsky.
Here.
Right, we have a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate that. Public comment. I don't know if we have any members of the public on the line with us.
We do
We
not.
do have one comment that was submitted via email that Tom forwarded to me. I think probably the way to do this, Judge, would be for me to read this aloud. Does that make sense? I'm getting affirmation from the judge. So I'll just go ahead and read it to you. This comes from Christopher Anthony, and it says, board members and directors, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to voice my comments to you. Approximately 11 months ago, I resigned as LNAA's General Manager of Cargo Operations. I was thankful and appreciative to have the opportunity to be employed and to take on the challenging task of managing the cargo operation supporting LNAA and Amazon. As you are well aware, the operation was a 7-day-a-week job with only a handful of days that we would not conduct operations throughout the year. At the time of my departure, I was managing 70 to 80 employees during an approximate 20-hour day operation. The job had many challenges, but with my core leadership personnel, we were able to provide the customer, parentheses Amazon, satisfaction knowing the cargo planes were offloaded, loaded in a safe manner without delays in some of the harshest conditions the Lehigh Valley would offer, parentheses rain, snow, high winds, etc. It was with great sadness and disappointment to get the news that LNAA would no longer be handling ramp operations effective the end of this month, April 2020. I was informed that earlier this year, prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, a large portion of the remaining ramp employees were notified that they would no longer be employed and be removed in some fashion. During my time at LNAA, I was told that operations conducted on LVIA will be done by LNAA employees. Is this statement no longer correct? Can you elaborate? How can an operation just 11 months ago where policies and procedures were created, developed and implemented by the cargo leadership team to conduct safe operations and provide a structure for cargo employees be dissolved in such a short time? I asked the members at this meeting, I understand I am not privy to all the information, but this decision to cease control impacts Lehigh and Northampton County LNAA cargo employees. During my final weeks at LNAA, I had the opportunity to have exit meetings with my direct supervisor and another key leadership member. They were professional and allowed me to voice my thoughts on the direction the cargo department should move towards. I was able to directly tell them my recommendation to the individual that should replace me and the members that showed the initiative, hard work, and attitude to continue to further the growth of cargo department. These suggestions were made because I was there with these members, watching and working with them to solve operational and administrative issues. These individuals were eager to learn, be mentored, and displayed leadership, exclamation point. The result of this hard work was displayed with good morale among all cargo employees and the understanding that we all have a part in making this a success. All of them took ownership and pride and did great work. My recommendations were heard, but unfortunately the LNAA leadership decided in another direction. I don't know all the circumstances that led to the cargo operation being handed off to another company, but I'm certain the decision of my replacement contributed to the events that led to the ramp operation to end. These events have weighed heavy on my mind since I received the news that has tremendously impacted the employees I was responsible for during my time at LNAA. These individuals worked hard and deserve recognition for the sacrifices and workplace hardships they endured. I'm appreciative of the opportunity that LNAA gave me in leading these employees, and appreciative I was able to meet and develop new relationships with these people I interacted with every day. Thank you for your time. Good luck and be safe. Chris Anthony. I submit that to directors. I know that we had some discussion related to the decision made by the administrative team to, for all intents and purposes, exit management of the cargo business, although LVIA is very much still in the cargo business. So I guess a response to Mr. Anthony would be that I believe the intent and the objective with the departure from the existing relationship that we had with cargo operations was intended to not exit the business itself, but to provide continuity of service and to continue to be in the cargo business. Tom, I don't know if you want to briefly elaborate in reply to Mr. Anthony.
Sure, I can do that, Mr. Chair. Absolutely, and I think you mentioned it, obviously we continue to evaluate all of our lines of business. Cargo certainly is one of those, whether it's effective for us and efficient for us to provide those daily services. I think certainly we understand that cargo ground handling is not the authority's core business. And certainly, I think the primary goals, as you stated, were achieved, and certainly the jobs are still here, the service is here, and so that mission was accomplished. certainly we looked at the numbers. Air cargo ground handling net profit, really was displaying a loss for 2020. And so in looking at that, I think it was really part of the analysis to determine whether we could continue to efficiently provide those services as the only station in their network that doesn't cross-utilize their employees between warehouse and ramp. So certainly the authority still gets to receive net revenue from aircraft landing fees, fuel sales, de-icing services, and really net impact was zero on the budget for us this year, but certainly that was a decision we didn't take lightly. And I think we had the employees' best interest in mind to make sure that there was a soft landing with Pinnacle to continue ground handling here at LVIA.
Excellent. And to just a quick update and to help answer Mr. Snyder's questions, the transfer of operations to Pinnacle continues, correct? That will be completed later this month?
It's actually effective tomorrow, so that the 29th is the transfer day.
Great. Any other members of the Board of Governors wish to address Mr. Anthony's comments? All right. Thank you, sir, and I'm actually very encouraged to have some public comment in this Zoom forum. It shows, I think, that there's still somebody out there who's following along here, and we can kind of continue the business of conducting the business of the authority even in these bizarre times. So that said, I'd like to move into some business, starting with the approval of our meeting minutes from March 31st, 2020. Those are in Novus. I hope you've had a chance to review. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make a motion, Matt. Mike Stershik.
Thank you, Mike. A second, please.
I'll second. John Douglas.
Thank you, sir. All in favor of approving the minutes of March 31st, 2020, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Great. Minutes are approved. That said, I'll move us along to our reports from committees. First one up is the treasurer's report from Mr. John Hayes. John,
Okay.
take it from there.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. With how these Zoom meetings work, I've asked Todd to take care of the report today. So Todd, if you could go ahead, please.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Just kind of going through this quickly in the year-to-date information. We're going to do a more detailed kind of breakdown in executive session. But you can see year-to-date where we ended up. Net income of about $436,000, almost identical to where we were at the end of the first quarter in 2019. So we're significantly ahead of budget, $651,000. If you start breaking down the numbers, we've had an increase in passenger and cargo flights for the first quarter. You see some of that recurring revenue that we're still getting for some parts of on the non-aviation portion, so that helped out a little bit. Ground handling, the big deal on that one is good weather means no de-icing, and I'll talk about that in the next slide. And then you see the parking ad. So this kind of breaks down how we got to that. Actually, this is an earlier slide, 563,000 year-to-date variance, but you can see that on the overall net income. That was the budgeted variance, but you can see most of that's personnel. Again, even though if you look at item number 15, 354,000 that we lost out on ground handling revenue for the de-icing, we also did not have to spend the same amount of money on the materials, which is number 2. So you kind of walk through most of that stuff. Again, we've done a really good job of managing expenses, even into the last part of March with the pandemic. But you can see even in 14 where some of the parking revenue has begun to be impacted. So again, we'll talk about this a little bit more, but again, we're ahead of budget year to date for the first 3 quarters. The breakdown of all of our first quarter, I'll get that right one of these days.
Yeah.
But all of our information is in Novus on our year-to-date breakdown. So any questions, again, we're going to have a more detailed discussion in the executive session. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Todd. Does anyone have any questions for Todd or for me on the finance report?
Okay,
Okay, Mr. Chair, back to you.
I would take a motion to accept the March 2020 Treasurer's Report.
So moved,
So
Mr.
moved.
Chair.
Thank you. Second,
Second.
and all in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Treasurer's Report has been accepted. Glenn, can you give us a Finance Committee report and a couple items to attend to here?
Great.
One very important.
Well, and the first item is we reviewed all of these items in the Finance Committee, Mr. Chair. They were moved forward with a unanimous consent to approve before the board. The first one is the deferral of our $2.4 million of bond principal payments on our bonds, our 2015 series bonds. This is primarily to allow us to preserve cash as much as possible during these difficult times and move these payments forward. Really not a whole lot more to that. If Todd has anything he wants to add to that.
No, actually, even though it's a principal deferment, this is actually a complete reissuance of the bonds, and from a paperwork standpoint, and we actually have to get some approval from the counties on this, which will be taken to them later, sometime in May. So, but again, this is actually going to help us out with cash flow this year. I think we have the slide up there so that kind of shows what happens. Yeah, that one. Yep. This kind of shows that 2.4 million for 2020. You see a little bit more interest in 2021, and then we have to catch up some in 2022, and then 2029 is when the rest of it would be payable to kind of catch up. But again, you've got to remember 1/1/26 is when we would be probably refinancing the bonds. That's our first kind of period to do that. We also have the ability, which we discussed at our Finance Committee, to repay 25% of the outstanding principal every 18 months, I believe it is.
Thank you, Todd.
Yep.
I'd ask for a motion then to approve approve the bond resolution as presented by the Finance Committee.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Tara.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of approving the bond resolution, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, move ahead then. Thank you.
The next one, Mr. Chair, is pretty straightforward. I think this is the one you were referring to. It is the paperwork necessary for us to approve the acceptance of the $6.2 million as part of the CARES Act funding provided by the federal government to the airlines and the airports from the recent COVID-19 legislation. So again, it's really just for us to say, yes, we're willing to accept this grant of $6.2 million.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Geisinger related to the CARES grant?
Glenn, Larry Hamburger. I just had one question. Are there any stipulations that go with that grant?
My understanding of it, and I'll have staff chime in if I'm in error, but my understanding of it is that beyond the standard grant requirement acceptances that come from the FAA, it is eligible for any operational expenses.
Yeah, that's correct, Glenn. The funding is still subject to our grant requirements in terms of grant assurances. However, unlike our typical FAA grants, which are used for very limited capital projects, the funds from the CARES Act will be used for operating expenses here, and that's really the critical lifeline needed right now. So that's absolutely true.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Is there any anticipation that there'll be future funding or future grants along these lines? Do we have a word on that from the legislative side?
At this point, we haven't heard anything. in terms of additional funding coming down the line. There's still portions of the CARES Act funding that's yet to be distributed for certain other aviation workers. So there are other lines of funding out there that impact aviation, but those distributions have not been determined as yet.
Thank you. Any other questions? I would accept a motion then to approve the CARES Act grant.
Second.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of accepting the grant, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Very good. The motion's approved.
That concludes any items from the Finance Committee, Mr. Chair, that I know of.
Thank you. Anybody have any additional questions for Glenn before we move on? Hearing none. We did hold a business committee meeting. There were no actions coming out of that committee required. So it was principally for purposes of discussion and updates from capital projects and from Darren on business development projects. Move along then and receive Tom's director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director's report will also include some information that we will provide in exec session. But for the purpose of the report, our March traffic was published. We had a decrease of nearly 42% in passenger volume, which is consistent with what we saw in terms of our throughput during the month of March at our TSA checkpoint. And as it stands today, our current passenger activity is averaging about 95% below our anticipated levels from what we experienced last year. In terms of some of the impacts that we are seeing as a result of the pandemic, about 64% of global commercial aircraft are now in storage. Locally here, Allegiant is reducing their system-wide flight capacity to about 90% of what they were at. We're seeing about 1 to 2 flights a week, depending on bookings. American has cut their capacity in April to about 60%, and we are currently seeing about 3 flights per day. Delta has cut their capacity by about 80%. They did suspend their Atlanta service for maybe earlier in April, and United did cut their capacity by about 80%. We are seeing flights to Chicago operating 3 times a week. The Newark shuttle service was suspended. And let's see, since our last board meeting on March 31st, on April 22nd, the staff reviewed the 60% design for the TSA checkpoint and terminal connector. So we've been working with Aurora and ADCI on that project and continuing the design effort, coming along well, and looking forward to actually being able to present more of that to the committee and to the board. The LNAA did extend the suspension on fingerprinting for new ID badge applicants through May 11th. We're working on a solution that enables social distancing and prevention of transmission of the virus, so we're working through that right now. We're also, in the midst of all this, working on our FAA Airport Certification Safety Inspection, our annual inspection. A lot of the administrative and paperwork portions, Steve Connors and his team are working through that portion with the FAA. Certainly the on-site inspection of airfield surfaces is postponed for now, but hoping to get that onto the schedule right now. We're looking at sometime in May if that's going to be possible. And on May 6th, we are looking to participate in a national Facebook Live Airport Music Festival. We're featuring local performers. For us, we'll be featuring Kendall Conrad, who's performed here for us many times. This was an effort put together by Austin Bergstrom Airport. They coordinated with over 20 U.S. airports to put this together. So this will be kind of a fun way for airports to showcase their live music that typically takes place in the terminal. And we'll be sending out more details with regard to that event. So That concludes this portion of the report. Happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Tom. Anybody have any questions for Tom at this moment? Great.
With one quick question.
Go ahead.
It's Ted. Can you hear me?
Yes, Ted, go ahead.
I wanted to ask you to comment on cargo in particular and what impact the crisis has had on our actual cargo flights. Are they increased, decreased, exactly the same? And yeah, what's the picture for cargo right at this moment?
Yeah, so good question, Ted, and happy to answer that. For the month of March, cargo was up about 48% over what we had seen last March. And ATI specifically was up 66% month over month for March. FedEx was actually down a little bit, and when we talked to FedEx, they are seeing a loss of a lot of their business-to-business, obviously, shipments. So that's understandable given the business closures we're seeing. But the cargo activity remains strong. We think that's going to be the case through the remainder of 2020. Forecasts from the industry show that to be the case. So we'll continue to see that activity level potentially grow. We're not really sure what schedules might look like further in 2020. But right now, the volume has gone up. The number of landings has gone up slightly over forecasts. So I think we'll continue to monitor that, but it's certainly a section of what's happening at ABE that is continuing to perform strong.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Sure.
The cargo certainly is it was a lifesaver in the past, and it certainly looks like it's a nice to have made those investments in the past that allow us to continue to have a little bit of a silver lining to some of the reduction in traffic here.
For sure.
Great. Judge Friedberg, move on to the solicitor's report, if you mind.
Very briefly, the financial disclosure forms are due on Friday, May 1st. I hope everybody has them in at this point. If not, we're running up against the deadline, and send them into Sylvette as soon as you can.
Thank you, Judge.
Yep.
Does anyone have any new business for the board? Sounds like none. I will then move on to, Larry presented a slate of officers for consideration at our March meeting. I would move this then to Larry to conduct the election of officers as presented. And Judge, I don't know if you want to weigh in. I know you had one comment regarding immediate past chair.
Yes, we will be selecting the chairperson, the vice chair, the secretary treasurer, and selecting two members who represent the member municipalities, one from Northampton, one from Lehigh. With regard to the immediate past chair, of course, there's no need for an election as to who the immediate past chair will be. We know that by virtue of having served previously. This year is somewhat unusual because the immediate past chair, Ed Lozano, is no longer a member of the board. Our bylaws provide that the immediate past chair serves as a member of the executive committee. However, the bylaws last year were amended to provide that that's only true if the immediate past chair is available to serve. That means if there's still, that immediate past chair is still a member of the board of governors. So in the absence of the immediate past chair being a member of the board of governors, the impact of that is that the executive committee, which normally has 6 people on it, will, for the coming year, have only 5 people on it. There'll be no immediate past chair member of the executive committee.
Thank you, Judge. Thanks for that explanation. Larry, do you want to take it from there?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize there, I have to change my thought process here real quick because the judge and I are walking on each other here. But simply stated, Ed's not a member anymore, so he can't serve. So that's the simplicity of it. But before we get to the nominations, do I have any nominations from the floor? If not, I'll present what we have here.
May I suggest that we do it by office, Larry? In other words, are there any additional nominations for chairperson? There are none, so any additional nominations for vice chairperson? There are none. Any additional nominations for secretary treasurer? There are none. Are there any additional nominations for the Northampton County representative? There are none. Any additional nominations for the Lehigh County representative? Mr. Chairman, there are no additional nominations, so you can proceed with your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The positions we'll be approving today are chairperson, Matt Turk, vice chairperson, Glenn Geisinger, secretary treasurer, John Hayes. In addition to that, we have two board members who represent the two member municipalities of Lehigh and Northampton counties, and that would be Tara and Ted. Having said that, I guess we put it to a vote now, Judge?
I think that, yeah,
but it's back to you to approve the, is there a motion? Do I make the motion?
You make the motion, Larry. Excuse me, each office should be voted on individually. First chairperson, then vice chairperson, so on down the line.
Even though there's no opposition? Okay.
You still have to record the vote.
Okay. So for chairperson, that would be Matt Turk.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? All right.
Vice Chair.
Matt has been chosen as chairperson for the coming year. Next, Larry, go ahead.
Vice chairperson, Glenn Geisinger.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Judge, it's Glenn Reedman. I'd like to abstain on Glenn Geisinger.
All right, noted as one abstention, no negative votes, and the rest were all positive. So Glenn Geisinger has been chosen as vice chairperson.
Thanks, Judge.
Secretary Treasurer,
Larry.
John. I'm sorry.
Are there any, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any negative votes? None. Any
Judge.
abstentions?
Judge,
Yes.
do I need to abstain because it's me?
No, you can vote.
Okay.
You should vote for yourself.
You're certainly.
You should vote for yourself.
You can
always vote
no, John.
I'll vote against myself. I'm going to get even with you people.
All right, appears that John has been selected secretary treasurer again. Then with regard to the each individual county, only the county members from that county vote. For instance, the Northampton County appointees vote for their representative, and the Lehigh County appointees and the board vote for their representative. So Larry, if you want to go ahead with that.
Yes, for the Lehigh County, Ted Rosenberger.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any
Ted
negative
Rosen-
votes? No negative votes, no abstentions. So Ted has been chosen as the Lehigh County representative. Okay, Larry, next.
Tara for Northampton County.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any negatives? No negatives, no abstentions. Tara is chosen as the Northampton County representative. Their terms will extend for 1 year until the next annual meeting in April of 2021. All right, Larry, anything further?
That should do it. Thank you very much, Judge, and thank you for everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Larry, for coordinating this effort. Very much appreciated, and just thanks. It's great, and really looking forward to working with this team. I think Larry did a fantastic job and went through a thoughtful process. And we've got a great group of people here who will be acting on the executive committee. So looking forward to working together for the next year. That said, I think we can move on. I know that there are some items that are best discussed in the executive session. Judge, could you please describe for us the items or the nature of the discussion that we're asking for an executive session for?
Well, one of the things we'll be discussing is a pending litigation matter involving a construction contract. That will be presented by Ryan, and I will be available, of course, as well to discuss it in the executive session. Darren, I don't know if you have anything that you want to present in the executive session.
No, Judge, I don't have anything today.
All right, nothing from Darren then. So that's the extent of what I have. Tom, I know, has some presentation of some factual information. This is simply for informational purposes. There will not be discussion or deliberation or voting on the matters that Tom is presenting, as I understand it. Is that correct, Tom?
That is correct, Judge.
Thank you, Tom.
All right, very well.
I would move that we enter executive session. Can I get a second on that, please?
Second.
Thank you. Colin, you want to give us a heads up when we're offline?